What's going on, everybody? Charging up here in the garage with the R6. Big project today, steel braided lines. Let's go! Now you may ask yourself, why would you want to add steel braided brake lines to your motorcycle? Other than the fact it's gonna look freaking awesome? This is why. The brake hoses that come from the OEM factory are most likely and 100% rubber. They are all going to be rubber throughout the bike. The rear and the front, they're all gonna be rubber. Now, rubber expands under pressure, so when you pull on the brake lever, the rubber can and will expand. The hotter they get, the more likely they are to expand. Over the lifetime of the motorcycle, the rubber hoses can expand, will expand, and over time, it'll actually degrade the rubber hoses. This will lead to braking issues. I'm gonna be completely honest with you, I have never seen that before on modern bikes, quote unquote, modern bikes. I have seen it on older 80s, 90s, early 2000s bikes. I have seen that before, but not with newer modern bikes. For the most part, a lot of people just do it because it looks better cosmetically on their bike, but you get a lot of performance. This leads me to my massive pro reason for doing this is the braking performance you gain from going from a rubber hose to the steel braided line. Just so everyone knows, this R6 model has ABS installed, and installing the steel braided brake lines can be a little more challenging on a model that has ABS than obviously installing it on a model that doesn't have ABS. Okay, enough talk. Let's get to it. Let's get started. Okay, step number one. We're gonna remove the brake fluid from the front master reservoir. Now, I could easily just use a pneumatic tool to do this, but I'm not going to. I'm actually just going to do this by hand and show you guys that anybody can do this as long as you have some tools needed to actually get this whole project done. You can actually even make this somewhat easier if you wish. Suck out all the brake fluid from the brake reservoir using a syringe or maybe like an old towel. Just dip it in there, let that towel soak it all up. Always remember to put stuff around your bike, your workspace, so you don't get any brake fluid anywhere, as I showed in a previous video where I showed you guys how to bleed and flush your brakes. I'll put that in the top right hand corner right now. Okay, got the top off on the reservoir right there. I've got the dust cover off. It's in my bowl, ready to go for later. Don't lose it. And then I've got my hose connected to the bleeder screw going to my storage bin right here where the fluid will come out. Now I'm actually just going to pump the brake lever twice and then open the bleeder valve, close it, continue the process until all my fluid is gone from there. I'm going to do this side, move on to the next side, and now after those two are done, I'm going to come over to our master and complete the process to make sure all the brake fluid is gone from the front of the system. Okay, so the front is done. I've got out as much fluid as I can from pumping the brake and obviously releasing the fluid from the left caliper, the right caliper. Nothing actually came out from the master, and it shouldn't because all the fluid was running downwards anyway and the air was going up. One thing you do have to remember when actually you're doing it this way without a pneumatic tool to suck out all the brake fluid, when you're disconnecting all the hoses, just be careful because there might be residue and fluid in some of the hoses depending on how it's routed through the actual bike. So that's all you have to just be careful on. The front end is complete. We're going to move on to the rear and we're going to remove all the fluid from the reservoir and the line. Okay, all the fluid has been taken out as much as we could from the reservoir and from the line by bleeding the actual system. Step number 3. To have more room in the front of the bike, I'm actually going to remove the front fender from the bike just so we have a little more room when it comes to playing around with all the hoses that will end up going right over here.
A few moments later.
Okay, front fender is gone. Only 6 bolts, 2 smaller ones, 1 long one, 2 small ones, 1 long one there. Same on both sides, 6 total. Let's move on. Step number 4, as you can see, I just threw a big rag over top of the wheel. I'm actually just concerned about some of the brake fluid maybe leaking out some areas. So I just want to protect as much of the area as I can. So I threw down a little rag covering as much randomness that I could. Step number 5, I'm going to grab some pliers, needle nose pliers. I'm going to actually remove the ABS sensor line that goes right over here in front of the manifold. So I'm going to grab a notch right there. So I'm going to grab with pliers and I'm going to just pull it down just to get it off that connector right there. Okay, that was a little harder obviously with me holding the camera and trying to do it. All you gotta do is clamp the top brackets right here with the pliers and it just pops right out from the holder right there. Step number 6, we're gonna go ahead and actually remove all the clips, all the extra clips that you see that actually holds on to the ABS line sensor going all the way down the line right over here. I'm gonna take off all those clips. Make sure you don't throw those away because we will be using them again to put them back onto the steel braided lines once we are done the project. So go ahead and keep those. I'm gonna go ahead and go around and unclip everything I can see and then we'll be back in a second. Okay, all the clips have been removed. 3 clips right over here. So it was 1, 2, 3, all on the left side caliper brake line. And then I also took out this one. The clip was right here. It's this guy right over here that I took out just so it doesn't fall somewhere and then have to search for it. So I took that out as well. Now at this point, because the way it is situated, I like to come in here with my phone. I'm actually gonna take a quick picture of the routing of this line. And I'm gonna actually just use that as reference for later on. I don't want this line to go in behind it or in behind that area. So I'm actually gonna take a picture of the way it is like this. And then that way I'll know, obviously once the brake lines and everything have been replaced, that this has to be loose and out of the way of anything else. All right, step number 7. Step number 7, I'm actually gonna start to slowly loosen the brake lines from the manifold. I'm gonna try and see if I can get in here. Gonna loosen the brake lines from the manifold. Always remember to just keep in mind of where they're going. So for example, the left caliper hose right here is going to right over there. And then the right one, this hose right here, is coming underneath, as you can tell right there. Then you've got the master cylinder hose, which is right over here, going up this way. That comes out to this side. Again, if you take a picture and you actually mark it or something like that, that's good. And at least that way you know. And what I'll do now is I'll actually show you the kit because I want to be completely transparent with you guys. The kit usually comes marked apparently, and it shows MC1, MC2, and all the different numbers. And they should have a marker on one or the other side of this. Mine came with no markings and no labels. I'm gonna have to figure out where these lines go. I don't think it's going to be hard. That one's going to be the rear. That's going to be the rear from the master to the reservoir. But I guess we'll have to see and play around with it. Unfortunately, mine didn't come labeled. Apparently, these kits do though. Okay, so I'm gonna try and get the camera in here. I just removed the 2 brake lines coming to the manifold. So this is the first one here. This one right here. As you can see, there's a bit of brake fluid leaking from that one, just a tiny bit, but I do have a rag right over here as well, so that should be okay. Then I moved this out of the way. You actually have to pull it out of the actual manifold. And then I was able to get at this one, and then I loosened it and then pulled it out that way and then dropped down. Okay, step number 8. Step number 8, we're actually gonna come in with an Allen key and we're actually gonna take out that bolt right there. This is actually holding the manifold to the actual bike with that one bolt there. So we're gonna go ahead and remove that and we'll be back in a second. Okay, so as you can see, I've got the bolt in my hand. That was right over here. I'll try and see if I can place it right back in here, right there. And then this comes out like that. There we go. Let's move on to the next step. Step number 9. Now we're gonna actually slowly take our hand. As you can see, that manifold is just in behind, attached to the brake lines. And I'm just gonna actually just touch it here. This is what you're gonna do. You're gonna grab the left side brake line. You're gonna push it towards the rats. Be careful pushing it towards the rack, obviously, because we have our cooling fins. But you're gonna go ahead and wiggle it off that bracket a tiny bit. And then it's gonna just fall off. Just gonna fall off on its own right over here. So we got this piece right here, and we're gonna pull this out like so. Now it's free from the back area. Step number 10, we're gonna remove the brake lines from the front calipers. Do this to both sides. As you do this, there will be a little bit of spillage, so I do have a rag right over here just to stop it from spilling everywhere. Just a tiny bit will come out here and there. And then we've got our washers as well. There'll be one on both sides. Don't need to keep the washers because the kit does come with washers that we will be reusing. I've taken out the left side as well. As you can see, I've got a rag over top of it just in case. Got our washer right there. The other washer is still stuck to the actual bolt. Cleaned up this area, and now what we can do is remove the entire piece. So now that we've done that, our brake lines are loose, and I'm going to remove the brake lines altogether. There you have it. This was the front brake lines, left side and right side this is the way that it was oriented on the actual bike, like so. I just needed 2 hands to actually just pull it out of there, just so I'm not scratching things and, you know. Anyways, let's move on to the next step. Step number 11, we're gonna go ahead and remove the Allen bolt right there that connects the hose coming from the master coming down and being attached to the lower triple right here. So we're gonna go ahead and grab our Allen key and we're gonna go ahead and take that out. So this will become loose. So as you can see here, I got it started with the size 4 Allen key, and I'm gonna actually just slowly start turning it on by hand because this one's actually in a pretty awkward location. So I'll do this one by hand for the rest. Oh, never mind. Okay, I turned it a couple times and there it is. All right, that one is loose. And as I do that, you can now see that the manifold, which was attached to the brake line, which was right there, came right out. Perfect. Just a quick tip here. If this bolt, this Allen bolt is really tight and you can't loosen it with an Allen key, you could always just take these two bolts right here, depending on obviously how old the bike is. It might be dirty or it might be seized, but these two bolts right here, undo it, comes off with the bracket holding the horn, and then you can get better access to it. You can actually bring it down to like around here and then just snap it loose with like a T-handle or something instead of having to go up there and do it like I did. I was actually fortunate that actually came loose really easy. Okay, step 12, guys. Now that this bolt is loose and we've got this dangling right here, next step is to remove the brake line coming from the master, and then we'll be able to pull this out. Let's go. Okay, so this hose coming from the master cylinder, as you can see, I'm gonna try and show you guys here. This is the hose right here that goes down to the manifold. There's a zip tie right over here. We'll have to cut that zip tie. Once you cut that zip tie, it'll come loose, and then the only bolt left is coming out of the master, and I'll be right there. Once again, because it is a brake line, I'm going to put a rag around it just in case there's, for some reason, any sort of liquid still up here. Doesn't look like there is. There's a tiny bit of residue on the bolt, on the Banjo bolt, but other than that. And now that that's done, grab the hose from the bottom. I'm going to actually grab the manifold from the bottom and I'm going to take the hose down through it. And there it is. That's the hose going from the master down to the manifold. All right, step number 13, we need to actually grab a bracket, which is right over here. There's a bracket facing, it's like an L-shaped bracket that was holding the manifold, the OEM manifold here. There's two little nubs facing the rad. The instructions say you can actually put cardboard piece in front of the rad so you don't damage the cooling fins, but there is a notch right here and you have to actually just straighten this portion. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab pliers. Hopefully I can get in here. So there's pliers right over here. I'm gonna put the camera down and then I'm gonna try and straighten this out with a smaller set of pliers without damaging the cooling fins.
A few moments later.
Okay, so that bracket is now straight. I just grabbed pliers and just manipulated it, pulled it towards me. That is straight. So I actually started with the tab on the right and then moved over to the tab on the left and then just kept on prying it, and that is pretty, it's not perfect, it's not perfectly flush, but I guess we'll see if the manifold that comes with the kit will sit on there properly. If not, I'll try and actually make that a little smoother. I've also seen some other people just completely cut off. So from there, just completely cut off this holder altogether. Now that that bracket is straight-ish, we can move on and we can start installing the new lines. Okay, step number 14, we're gonna grab our three-way manifold that came in the kit. Do it hand tight first to the line coming from the pressure regulator, which is this one right here. Let's go ahead and do that now. So what I want to mention, as you put this three-way manifold into that brake line there coming from the pressure regulator, you want to make sure that the brass olive, which is already inside the actual manifold, is facing towards the actual brake line. The other side will not have a brass olive. That side will have, I'm pretty sure that side is the left side caliper. Just heads up as you're installing it. Obviously it's in the instructions as well. As you can see, here is the three-way manifold right over here. Grab the male end right there of the back one. So there's two lines coming from the pressure regulator. There's two lines showing right here, the brake lines. You're gonna take the rear one, the one closest to the rad, and you're gonna hand tighten into the three-way manifold like so. With the hole upwards, you got one line that way, another line will be able to come from this side and one from underneath. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our M4 by 14 millimeter bolt supplied with the kit, and we're gonna actually take it and mount it to the bracket right here, that hole that I just mentioned earlier, and then that will keep that manifold in place. Let's go ahead and do that now. Okay, so as you can see, the manifold is connected with the supplied hardware, the M414 bolt right there, and then our brake line coming into the manifold is there. Now everything so far is just hand tight. As you can see, it's still really loose, and that's because two more lines need to come into this manifold, and it's just a lot easier to keep it loose than tighten everything and then, you know, struggle with it and everything else. So let's go ahead and move on to the next step. All right, guys, step number 15, we're gonna go ahead and install the left side brake line right over here. Just hand tight, and I'll show you guys why in a second. Step 16 is going to be installing the right side caliper line, which is right here. As you can see, it's sticking out right there. Installing the actual brake line is going to be a trial and error portion because of the fitting bolts right here. If it runs down on its own, it doesn't line up properly because it is bent the wrong way. However, they do supply parts in the kit. These two parts right here will hold the fitting. This will go in the fitting. You'll hold it down either with a vise or with the tool. I don't have a vise in my garage, so I'm gonna have to use this this tool, and then we're actually going to turn and manipulate the bolt right here, the fitting. We're going to turn it, and then we're going to see how it lines up. That's the only way to actually get this to line up perfectly for your bike. And this is what I mean when it's going to be a trial and error. It's going to go on and off, on and off, on and off until I have it the way that I like it. The two plastic pieces should go around the actual fitting crimp right over here in the middle, and then with this guy you can put this through the eye, and then you should be able to twist it and then get that into the position that you like. This is what I've done so far. I've got the light over here, so as you can see, this line right here is our left line. We've got our right line as well. So as you can see, I've got the left side line right over here coming right to the left side caliper, and I've actually positioned now the fitting and turned it to fit nicely right up against the caliper right there. That's exactly how you want it. You don't want to force it or anything like that. This is what I mean about the trial and error of trying to get it done. Then we've got the right side right there. I want to have it just in front of the rad like so, coming down. Once again, I've turned it to a point where it actually fits nicely up against the right side caliper right there. So I do just want to stop here for a second. As I mentioned, this part and then goes like this. Then the other part goes on top. Then you grab your vise or your wrench, and you should be able to then clamp it nice with a lot of force with the clamp, and then grab this guy and then turn the actual black fitting. So the only part that turns is this black fitting here. I unfortunately have had issues doing this, but in theory apparently this works. I contacted Speaker and apparently it should work. So go ahead and try that portion first, and if not, then go to the end of the video and I'll show you guys what I did with mine. I've gone ahead, I'm jumping ahead here. This is the line that goes up to the master cylinder. The female end is plugged into the male end that comes off the actual line right here. This is the front one. However, we'll ignore that for now. We'll go ahead and continue with the left and right lines and then go from there. Step 16 was to actually put the right side brake line in. So this one actually goes to the bottom of the manifold, whereas the left side line goes to the right side of the manifold, obviously the way that I'm looking at it right now. Then the right side brake line comes down like so. At this point right now, at least for now, is I took one of the Banjo bolts that comes with the kit with the two crush washers there. So there's that one like so. On the other side, however, I decided to put the stock one back in. I just hand tightened it in there for now. I just wanted to see what it would look like, whether or not I want it to be the stock Banjo bolts or the ones that came with the kit. I can't really decide. I think I like the stock one better. I don't know why. I think I like the stock one better. I can't decide. I don't know. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself here. So once you've got the fittings obviously on the left side and the right side to how you want it, I'm going to go ahead and tighten the lines at the manifold. I don't want any of those moving around anymore. I'm going to move this out of the way here for a second. I don't want any of those moving around anymore because I do have the fitting and the adjustment where I want it and how I want the lines to be. I'm happy with that. I'm going to go ahead and tighten those up right now. Use my size 10 wrench on the OEM output from the actual brake pressure regulator, I guess. And just take your time. It's gonna take a little bit of time to actually get this done. Get everything in there nice and tight, so take your time. I'm gonna go ahead and do this. We'll do a time lapse and then we'll come back after done tightening everything. Before I do that, I'm actually gonna use a brake line wrench, or yeah, I think brake line wrench, to do the brake line kit. Just it goes in, fits over it nicely. This is a 7/16. The kit is out of the US, so I'm gonna use my 7/16 brake line kit and then I'll tighten that one that way. All right, got my left side with my 10 done. Now I'm gonna go ahead and move over to the other side. My brake line wrench, I'm gonna go ahead and get this side, the left brake line tight, the right side I already did. All right, that's done. So we've got our input coming into the manifold. That's tight with the size 10. Then I've got my left side caliper line right over here, tightened with my 7/16 brake line wrench. Oh, no, I need that again. I'm gonna use the same wrench over here. Now I'm gonna tighten the right side brake line going to my right caliper. I'm gonna tighten that up as well at the manifold. As mentioned before, just take your time. It is a tight squeeze in there, so take your time. You don't wanna ruin any of the fins from the rad either, so just take your time and get this done properly.
A few moments later.
Quick recap. We've got our line coming from the pressure regulator into our manifold. That's nice and tight. We got our left brake line, which is right here, going into the left side of the manifold, which is nice and tight now. And then we also have our right brake line, which comes to the bottom of the manifold, which is nice and tight as well. So That's good there. Perfect. Just in case I didn't say it earlier, that was step 17 to tighten everything up at the manifold from the left brake line and the right brake line. Step 18 can actually be tighten the brake line coming from the output from the pressure regulator or the pressure modulator, however you want to put it. That one is tight as well. So those three are tight. This one for now is still hand tight because it's actually being routed up towards our master, which we're not there yet. That takes us to step 19. Step 19 would be to take the banjo bolts, tighten them to the specified specs of the motorcycle. We're going to go ahead and do that on the left side and on the right side. I still haven't decided what banjo bolts I'm going to use. Maybe I'll use the one supply for now. And then if I don't like the way they look, maybe I'll go back to the OEM one. Yeah, let's do that for now. All right, I've gone ahead and used my torque wrench here and I've torqued the front caliper banjo bolts down to 10 foot-pounds. I'm pretty sure it's 10 foot-pounds. I will double check the service manual and I'll put that on the screen if I am wrong. But for now, I'm gonna leave it at 10. So we are nice and tight on the left, nice and tight on the right. Yeah, we're getting there. Let's go. That was step 19. Step number 20, and I just want to reiterate this. Just make sure everything's nice and tight. Just make sure everything's nice and tight, that you did tighten the lines so far at the manifold. And right now, I'm not talking about the one going up to the master because we haven't done that yet. That's our next step. Obviously, we're looking at the output into the manifold, nice and tight. The left brake line is tight, and then our right brake line at the manifold is also tight. We're gonna go ahead and move on to step 21, which will be the master, routing the master line up to the master where your hand lever is, and then getting this done as well. Let's go. All right, guys, step number 21, we're gonna install the brake line coming from the master cylinder, which is up there. We're gonna bring it down in the same place. Remember, this is where it was actually connected to with the metal bracket, so that will get attached afterwards. I've gone ahead and put this in here, so just hand tight for now. It's going to the input brake line from the brake pressure modulator valve right here. And then we're gonna go ahead and go to the top, and then we're gonna see our routing here. So I've gone ahead and I've routed it to the same position that the stock one was. Came up to here. As you can see, there's the line, and then it comes up, and as you can see, it's right here. I've got the fitting. I actually didn't have to do anything with the fitting. It actually fit nicely. Got the banjo bolt and the two washers as well. So that's hand tight on there as well. I actually like the way it looks, and it's free of anything, which is good. And I like the way it looks down here as well. All right, so the fitting is done up top. I've got my little rubber piece right here ready for that mount, and I like the way that that's positioned as well, so that looks pretty good so far. Okay, so now that I have the positioning where I want it, I'm going to go ahead and tighten down everything, including the banjo bolt up top, and then we'll get at this bracket afterwards. So for this one, it's a little bit different. You'll need a 9/16 wrench on this one because this is obviously the female side that goes into the male side. All right, so we got our 9/16 on the steel braided line side, holding that, and then we'll grab our size 10 and go towards the OEM brake pressure modulator, and we're gonna go ahead and tighten those two down. Once again, take your time, make sure it's nice and tight. All right, guys, step number 22, we're gonna grab that mount piece that we took off earlier from the stock brake. We're gonna go ahead and put it right over here onto the mounting piece that comes with the kit. All right, so now that the bracket is there, I'm gonna go ahead and grab the Allen bolt that was there previously, and we're going to attach the mount. So because of the tight space here, this is where we need our Allen key. I'll use my Allen key here, and we'll get this tightened down. This one's actually taking me a lot longer than I thought it would, mainly because there's barely any room or space to get the Allen key in and then to actually turn it. Once again, take your time, get it in there, and then tighten it down.
A few moments later.
All right, there we go. That guy's tight. However, now that I've got that nice and tight, I've seemed to have moved the cable over that way. So I'm just gonna actually just pull the cable down back to the location where I want it to be. All right, step 23, we're gonna go ahead and just double check that we've tightened every single bolt and fitting here and on the calipers along with the master cylinder over there. We're gonna go ahead and just double check everything. I got everything lined up nicely. All right, that is awesome. That looks good. That was step number 23. Step 24. Admire your work. Look at it. It looks awesome. That looks sick. That looks awesome. Super happy with the way it's turned out so far. We're almost there. Halfway there. We are halfway there. We got our fittings in. We got everything tightened down. We're going to go ahead and move on to the next step. Okay, guys, step 25. We're going to go ahead and remove all the tools from the front. We're going to put it aside, and we're going to go ahead and reinstall the front fender that we removed previously, and then we're gonna go ahead and put all the clips. We're gonna take all the clips and we're gonna put them back on our line. As you can see, I've got some flexible, you know, those little zip tie thingamabobs here. I just had that keep this wire out of the way. I've had it on both sides. So we're gonna go ahead and take our ABS sensor line and we're gonna attach it to our brake lines as well. Let's go ahead and do that now. All right, our front fender is back on. I've got the bracket installed back over here along with this holder right here that holds the brake line. Nicely done. And then I've move over to this side. Once again, we got our bracket hooked into the front fender, and then we've got our brake line coming. We also have our ABS sensor line right here that's actually in behind the brake line being held by the same clamp or bracket. And then as you can see, I've routed it to the way it was from factory. One thing I do want to mention, I did make a bit of a mistake over here with the way I added the brake line on the left side and the banjo bolt. I actually had it underneath on this side as I was messing around with it, and then I realized that's got to be on this side pointing upwards. So I went ahead and changed that. I quickly moved the fitting just a tiny bit and I got that nicely put up so it goes upwards like that instead of behind that stopper. There's a stopper right there. I accidentally put it there, but it has to be on this side. It has to be facing upwards. As you can see on this side as well, it's facing upwards. Yay, let's go. Okay, so I've cleaned up a bit around the bike, around the front end, got the front fender on. We're good to go on that end. And I've gone ahead, and as you can see, this is pretty much empty. I've only got my banjo bolt and our dust cover. I've also put all the clamps back on its place. Now, as you can see, there's 3 rubber grommets along the cable. I've actually just spaced them out evenly, pulled them down, and I put the actual clamps back on. The reason for the rubber grommets is because the stock brake lines are so much thicker and rubber that these actually go over with the stock ones, but would not go over just the blue. So they have the rubber grommets to have those clips over and then clip back on just to hold the ABS sensor line coming down. That looks nice. That looks nice and sharp. Go on to the back. All right, guys, step number 26. We're gonna move to the rear of the bike, and as I move to the rear of the bike, we're gonna actually go ahead and start removing the OEM rubber hose, and then we're gonna remove all the clips that you see all along the actual hose too. Before I do that, I'm gonna go ahead and take a picture of it just in case, you know, just so you remember where everything is for when you're reinstalling. All right, so we're gonna remove all the clips and everything else that's holding the wheel sensor line onto it. So let's go ahead and start doing that. I'm gonna grab these little zip tie thingamabobbers. I don't know what they're called, but I'm just gonna tie it to the fender just so I can get that wheel sensor line out of my way. Just take your time doing this. Make sure you don't break any of the clips or anything like that. We are gonna reuse the clips. Step 27, I'm actually gonna grab my Allen key and I'm actually just gonna remove this bracket that holds the rear reservoir to it. I just want a little bit more space. I'm gonna go ahead and remove that. Now that that is done, I'm gonna go ahead and move to step 28. I'm gonna actually start removing everything. I'm gonna remove the lines, remove the banjo bolt, see the 2 washers, remove the manifold as well, and then we'll start putting things together. Now, as we do this, I'm actually just gonna put down some rags. If there's any more brake fluid in the lines or anything like that, just so if it spills, you can just clean it up real quick. I see a tiny bit in the line right there. So we're gonna go ahead and remove the banjo bolt and the 2 washers. Now I'm gonna grab my size 10 wrench and I'm gonna go ahead and remove the manifolds from the back. All right, gonna grab my size 12 socket and go ahead and take this line off because this line is being replaced as well. I see a bit of brake fluid, rag ready, and then take the banjo bolt out. Step 29 would have been to remove this bracket right here. So far, I've removed the brake line, and then I removed this brake line here as well, which goes, both brake lines go back to the manifold. So I'm still trying to get at the manifold, just making some more space as obviously there's limited space back here.
A few moments later.
All right, so the manifold is gone. The manifold is gone. It's actually right over here. As you can see, there's a bracket on the back of the manifold. We have to actually keep that. So I'm going to go ahead and take the bolt out from the back, like so, and we're going to keep that bracket while these brake lines actually go over there and out of the way. There's actually some brake fluid coming out, so I'm going to go ahead and clean that up and put this aside. All right, guys, step number 30, we're gonna take our first manifold. There's actually 2 that come in the kit for the back. So we're gonna grab our first one. We're gonna make sure that the brass olive is facing upwards towards the actual brake line. So we're gonna go ahead and install the first manifold to the first line towards the bike. So the one that's closest to the bike. This is the input line. So we're gonna go ahead and do it, but we're gonna do it only by hand tight. We're not gonna tighten down anything as of yet. Go ahead and position that and then tighten that down by hand. All right. There's that one. Then we're gonna grab our second manifold, once again, brass olive facing towards the brake line. And this is the one furthest away from the bike. And since the last one was the input, this is obviously the output. Perfect, the two manifolds are good to go. So that was step number 30, was the first manifold. Step number 31 can be basically the second manifold installed to the output line. Okay, step 32. Step 32, we're gonna have to take this bracket that came off the OEM manifold. And as you can see right here, there's a bracket that goes a little bit over a 90. We're gonna have to flatten this to be able to put this bracket up nicely and then make it nice and flush along the actual manifold. We're gonna go ahead and grab our pliers and then we're gonna make this nice and flat. All right, so I took the pliers and then put it on the edge and then crimped it, or just squeezed it down, and now that is straight. It's not perfectly straight, but I think it'll do. All right, step 33, we're gonna take the two manifolds, we're gonna grab our bracket, and we're also gonna grab the two pieces of hardware that came in the kit. And now we're gonna take these two, we're gonna take the hardware, push it through the manifold with the nut on the back, along with the bracket, and then we're gonna make sure that everything is nice and connected together. I think this is gonna be pretty challenging considering that there's limited space in here. Hold on a second. Let me try something here. I'm gonna undo the second manifold from the output. I'm gonna undo the manifold from the input brake line. Because there's barely any space there, why not just do it on the outside here? Like, yeah. So I've got my hand, everything's free. I can do everything on my own here. Yeah, why not just do that? Why not just do that? And obviously don't tighten everything. Right now, for now, just hand tight. And now that we have it like this, now let's put it in there. Now let's put it in the actual brake line. Yeah, like I think this is so much easier. You gotta position it the right way and then just hand tight everything in there. Yeah, that was a lot easier. I'm sort of following the instructions and looking at it, but yeah, that was a lot simpler to put the manifold together away from the bike, along with the bracket and the hardware, and then just come in afterwards. Okay, step 34, I'm actually gonna take that little piece, that bracket, use the OEM mount, or use the OEM hardware that we took it off of, put this back on there for the time being. I just want the bracket to be sitting where I need it to be, and then I can manipulate everything afterwards to where I need it to be. So everything is still loose. All right, so now that that bracket is there, I'm actually just gonna go ahead and tighten down. So step 34, I'm gonna actually go ahead and tighten down the input and output brake lines coming into the manifold. I'm gonna go ahead and tighten those two down. All right, so we got those tightened down. Step number 35, we're gonna grab our first brake line and we're gonna install it onto the manifold closest to the bike. So closest to the bike. So we got our first brake line like so. As you can see, unfortunately, I've gotta turn this fitting almost a whole 90 degrees. So we're gonna go ahead and grab our tools that came with the kit and we're gonna have to turn this fitting all the way around.
A few moments later.
All right, guys, so as you can see, I've got the brake line right over there into the manifold, and it's gonna come out here, and I turned this one pretty much 90 degrees at this point, so now it'll actually line up, and we can get that Banjo bolt on it. So we'll go ahead and grab the Banjo bolt. Now with the two new crush washers, this is gonna be the Banjo bolt that came with the kit, not the one that we took out. And we're gonna thread that in there by hand for now. All right, so far so good. Step 36, since I've got the positioning good from the manifold all the way to the Banjo bolt fitting, I'm actually gonna go ahead and tighten down both ends. I'm gonna do the manifold first, then the Banjo bolt, and we'll move on to the next step. Just an added reminder, don't forget to use the crush washers that are supplied in the kit, one on each side. All right, next. Step 37, we're gonna go ahead and install the long brake line to the manifold and then we'll route it over to the caliper. All right, so we got our brake line. It's gonna be a little difficult here because again, barely have any room to maneuver around. Trying to stick my fingers in here. Hey, that worked. Okay, so that is good. As you can see, it lines up pretty well over here with the bracket. I'm gonna clip that right in there. Then we're gonna go ahead and clip this guy in there as well. Yes, yes. All right, and make sure that we have our fitting in here properly. So we do have to make an adjustment with the fitting. I want this like that, like that, like that. So we do have to make an adjustment with the fitting. We're gonna have to turn this about 90 degrees like that. So it's like that. Let's go ahead and do that. I've moved the fitting almost 90 degrees here, and now we can go ahead and attach it to the caliper. Let's grab the Banjo bolt and the two washers. Once again, I am using the Banjo bolts that came with the kit just to keep it black, but I guess, I don't know, we'll see if I change back. Put it down now. Just hand tight for now. All right, there we go. That looks so nice. That looks nice. Step 38, take the wheel sensor line and position it back nicely onto our brake line. Step 39, once you've got the positioning of the wire and your brake line, let's go ahead and tighten up the banjo bolt and the line at the manifold. Okay, brake line tight at the manifold. I'm gonna go ahead and just tighten the banjo bolt down at the caliper, a tiny bit there. Then we'll grab our torque wrench, tighten that down as well. We're gonna double check all our fittings just to make sure everything is nice and tight. This looks awesome. I just keep looking at it. Anyways, we're gonna go ahead and double check. I know for a fact this bolt right here that connects the two manifolds together, that is still loose. We're gonna have to try and somehow get an Allen key in there. Obviously this will be a lot easier to just grab a wrench and hold that nut, but we have to grab the wrench there. That's gonna be super difficult, but we'll have to get it somehow. We gotta get our bracket here and put it right back into place, and this will actually hold up this guy right here, so we can't forget about this guy. Okay, so we got our bracket back in here. This is the bracket that will hold the rear reservoir like so. All I honestly did was remove that bolt in the back that holds the manifold, the bracket, and then just put this bracket in front of that bracket and then use that same bolt and mount it right back to where it came from. Now the only thing left is to go ahead and tighten this part right here. So you see this nut right here, and then the bolt is all the way back in there, if I can see it right there. But yeah, we gotta somehow get at that and tighten that down, which then tightens the two manifolds together.
A few moments later.
Okay, so I actually got that tightened down. It wasn't as hard as I thought. I actually just grabbed an Allen key. I went to the back behind the spring, held the bolt, and then with a wrench, I went ahead, just tightened the nut. So it wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. All right then, that works. Now all I gotta do is put this guy back on, but I'm gonna leave this off because we're done. We're done. Look how sick it looks. I'm gonna get this out of the way for a second. That looks nice. It's subtle. It's a subtle blue, but I think it needed blue around here. There was just too much black. There was just too much black color going around, especially with the swing arm and everything. I think the blue just adds that little accent of the blue. That looks nice. And obviously we come to the front over here and you can just see the blue brake line come down here, and then the blue brake line on the left side as well. And let's not forget the blue brake line going up to the master. That looks sick. That looks awesome. Oh man, super happy with how it looks. So obviously this guy's over here, that's gonna be up there, but yeah. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below of the blue steel braided brake lines. All right, time to get this project done, and that is by adding brake fluid and making sure everything is nice and pressurized. As I'm doing this, I'm actually just gonna make sure that all the fittings are good and nothing's leaking out of there. Everything is tight, but you never know. All right guys, let's go ahead and get started. I'm gonna put brake fluid, brand new brake fluid, into the reservoir. I'm using Yamalube .4 brake fluid, as I did in the previous video. I'll put that in the top right hand if anybody does want to see that video. Let's go ahead and get this done. On this end, we'll start with the rear and then we'll move to the front afterwards. All right, let's go ahead and fill the reservoir. So I did fill the reservoir almost obviously just a bit higher than the actual line. And that's because, remember, the line is completely empty. There is no brake fluid in the system right now. I'm gonna be sucking all that in, and we're gonna do that same with the front as well. I'm gonna start off with a brand new set of steps here. These next set of steps are gonna be to completely get all the air out and add brake fluid to a brand new line. So step number one, install the line onto the brake line bleed screw, which is right over here. So that is done. Make sure the bleeder screw is closed. I've got my size 10 wrench right here for when I do need to open it. Now I'm gonna do this a little bit differently than I did in the previous video. Step 3, we're gonna actually just push down on the brake pedal just a bit halfway, and then we're gonna hold it. As you can see, there's actually fluid coming out already right there. There's fluid coming out. That's obviously a good sign. The screw is open. I'm gonna go ahead and hold down the pedal, and you can see there's bubbles. There's a bunch of bubbles coming out now. Step 4, hold the lever and then close the screw. So I'm gonna hold the lever, I'm gonna hold the pedal down, and I'm gonna close the screw. Right now I'm gonna, step 5, I'm gonna release the lever and then open the screw again. This will actually start the pushing of the air out of the actual system. Okay, step 6, I'm gonna go ahead and push down on the brake pedal. Step number 7, we're gonna repeat this up until we see some of the fluid coming out of the line. Let's go ahead and do that now. There's a big air bubble there. Release, push down, close. Release the screw, push down, close. As I'm doing this, I'm also looking around to see if there's any sort of leakage or anything from the fittings that we did. So far, so good. Step number 8, we're gonna actually keep an eye on the reservoir. It's gone down a tiny bit, but we still have a lot to go. All right, so we're still continuing on here, and as you can see, the level of the reservoir is down really low now, so that's a good sign. Everything is flowing. We're gonna go ahead and refill it again. Okay guys, so I just filled the reservoir for the third time, and now you actually start seeing more and more fluid gonna flow into the actual storage compartment here. Now, at this point, we've got fluid throughout the system and I've got pressure, but I can feel that there's air in the system. So we're gonna continue going on here and we're gonna try and get all that air out of the system. Now we're gonna revert back to the other method. We're gonna actually close the screw. We're gonna pump it 3 times and open the screw. You can see all those bubbles over there coming. Do it one more time. Oh yeah, we're getting fluid, but we're getting a lot of bubbles. We need to get all those bubbles out of there. As I'm doing this, I need to keep an eye on the reservoir, and if it needs to be filled up, then we'll fill it up. So I see less and less air bubbles coming out of the line now.
A few moments later.
All right, we're getting less and less air in the system. I don't see any air in the system at all at this point, just fluid. 1 or 2 more times. All right, now I'm gonna top off the reservoir 1 more time. This time I'm just gonna top it off just under the line. And now I did that, I'm gonna grab the top piece, and now we're gonna take the reservoir and put it right back onto the bracket. And now that that is done, we've got good pressure from the back. Now all I gotta do is take off the hose from the bleeder screw, let that flow all into the storage there. As it's doing that, I'm gonna go ahead and clean up. And now that that is done and cleaned up, I'm gonna go ahead and make sure the bleeder screw is nice and tight, and we're gonna go ahead and put on the dust cover. We've got brakes. We got brakes in the back. We've got brakes. Now let's go ahead and do the same in the front. I did fill the reservoir right there, so it is actually filled more than usual. It's actually gone down a little bit since I filled it because of gravity. It's gonna actually just start rolling down into the actual system. I'm gonna go ahead and go to our left side. I'm gonna start on the left side here. I've already got my line and my little storage bin here for the fluid once it comes out. Start from the left, move over to the right, and then the master afterwards. I'm gonna be completely honest with you guys. I completely forgot about these steps for the rear. I'm gonna actually just start over with the steps. I'm gonna go from step 1 on what to do. I completely apologize. I just wanted to get this done, to be honest with you. And yeah, I just kept on going. I think I did still explain everything when it came to the rear, but anyways, let's go ahead and start the front. Okay, so step 1, I'm gonna install the line onto the bleeder screw, which is right here. Obviously, we've got our vinyl hose going, and it's going down into our little storage bin where the fluid will come out and flow into. Step number 2, make sure that the bleeder screw is closed. So the bleeder screw is closed. I've got my size 8 wrench right here, ready to go. Step number 3, I'm gonna go ahead and open the bleeder screw. As you can tell, I don't have my hand on the lever. Go ahead and open the bleeder screw. And now I'm gonna go ahead and pull on the brake lever about halfway to the handle. I'm gonna go ahead and pull on it about halfway to the handle. All right, so step number 3, the bleeder screw is open right now. I'm gonna go ahead and with my left hand, push on the brake lever about halfway. And now that I've got it pushed down, I'm gonna go ahead and close the actual bleeder screw. So step 4 is hold the brake lever and then close the bleeder screw. Step number 5, release the lever and then open the bleeder screw once again. Step number 6, push on the lever. So we're gonna push on the lever once again, and then we're gonna close the bleeder screw. Step number 7 is I'm gonna go ahead and repeat this until I start seeing some fluid coming out of the hose. Step number 8, as I'm doing this, I'm gonna keep an eye on the master reservoir just to make sure that obviously there's still fluid in there, which there is. So that's step number 8.
A few moments later.
Open, push on the lever, close, let go of the lever. Open, push on the lever, close, let go of the lever. I am keeping an eye on the master cylinder. It's gone down a tiny bit. At the same time, I'm actually just looking around at the fittings and the banjo bolts and everything else. Obviously everything is tight, but you never know if it could leak. And I'm just keeping an eye on that as well. Starting to see some fluid now. So we're gonna go ahead and move over to the right side caliper and do this process as well.
A few moments later.
Step number 12 is going to be the same thing. I'm gonna do the same process here at the master. I'm gonna go ahead and open the bleeder screw, push on the lever, and then close the bleeder screw. This shouldn't take long as well because we are right here. Open, push, and close. And as you can see, there's already fluid here as well, which is perfect. All right, so since there is fluid here already and it's flowing, we're gonna move on to step number 13. Oh, a little bit of fluid came out there. I'm gonna go ahead and clean that up real quick. step number 13, and we're gonna go back to the left caliper where we started at on the front. All right guys, step number 14, we're gonna go ahead and change up the process a little bit. Now that the bleeder screw is closed, I'm gonna go ahead and pump on the brake lever 3 times and hold it. Then I'm gonna come over here and I'm gonna open the bleeder screw. I'm gonna go ahead and open the bleeder screw and push the lever all the way down. Then close the bleeder screw and release the lever. Then I'm gonna pump it again and again. Do the same process. Pump, open, push the lever down, close, and then repeat the process. You see there's bubbles in the air, there's bubbles in the system. We want to get rid of all those bubbles from the brake system. We'll go ahead and start from the left side for now.
A few moments later.
Alright guys, step number 15. Once we're happy with the flow from the left and right caliper, at this point I don't have any air bubbles coming out from the left or right caliper. We're going to go ahead and move up to the master. As you can see, I've got my hose on the bleeder screw, got my little bottle right here. We're going to go ahead and do the same thing at the master. Alright, so at this point I've done it 3 times in a row and I'm not seeing any air bubbles. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. That is awesome. That's perfect. Step 16, go around and actually clean off the bleeder screw from each caliper just to make sure that there's no brake fluid anywhere and it can get anywhere on the painted surfaces. At this point, step number 17, I'm going to go ahead and refill the master cylinder. I'm going to go ahead and refill it just under the top line. Not going to overfill or anything like that. Can't wait. I can't wait to get out there and try it. Hopefully the weather breaks soon. All right, so at this point, I'm actually going to take the top back on here, and then we're going to take the cap and put the cap on as well. And let's not forget, we've got our holder and the screw for the front. All right, guys, we are almost done this long process of changing out the brake lines, but it's going to be worth it. It's going to be super worth it. I'm going to add another step here. Step number 18. I'm going to take 2 cable ties or zip ties, however you want to call it. And as you can see, I'm actually just going to take it and put it around the lever. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. I'm going to hold it and I'm going to pull the zip tie nice and tight. This will actually help in 2 ways. As you can see, I've actually gone ahead and done it to the rear as well. So it's pulled down and I've got the zip tie going through my bench right here. I've got 6 or 7 zip ties anyways. And this will help, as I mentioned, in 2 ways. 1, this will help any remaining air stuck in the system to move its way up to the reservoir. Anything in the system, anything in the lines, whether it be the left side, right side, or in the middle anywhere, it's gonna actually move up. Air likes to rise up and move upwards, so it's gonna come up and go into the reservoir. Let this sit for a couple hours. Honestly, if you're not going for a ride, leave it like that for a day or 2. It won't hurt it. It won't hurt it whatsoever. Leave it like that for a couple hours at least. Reason number 2, now with the pressure being held on the rear and on the front, we can do a quick walk around, not only to admire our work and how nice it looks, but we can just quickly glance here and there. I'll grab a flashlight afterwards. I'd like to see if there's any sort of leakage anywhere. Maybe you forgot to tighten something down. Everything looks good on the rear end. It doesn't hurt to go around and double check there's nothing up there. No leakage here as well. Everything looks good in there. Again, I'll grab a flashlight and just double check, but everything does look awesome. The last step of this process, guys, I'm just go around and just clean everything. Just make sure there's no brake fluid anywhere. I'm probably gonna wash the bike anyways, get it ready for the riding season. I'm gonna go ahead and take the bike out afterwards and get it nice and shiny. All right, guys, that's it for today's video. Hope you enjoyed it. That was the long process of replacing the OEM brake lines to the steel braided colorful lines that we got going on the R6 now. That looks awesome. I love the way it looks. If you guys have any comments, any sort of questions about the system, let me know in the comments down below. What I'll actually end up doing is I'm actually just gonna do a quick video on the process and what I ran into and what issues I ran into, especially with the fittings. I'll do that in the next video coming up very soon. Oh, she looks so beautiful. All right, guys, if you do end up getting this steel braided line kit, I just want to show you what you might have left over. You have the bolt left over from where we took out the manifold, the OEM manifold. So that's the bolt right there. You'll have the washers from the old Banjo bolts. You'll have the 2 Banjo bolts here. Obviously one there and one over there. Once again, we've got the 2 Banjo bolts, one from the master and one from the right side caliper. And then we'll also have this guy left over right here. We used the hardware from the kit, and this is the OEM one that was actually in there holding the manifold together. that's left over. And then once again, on this side, we'll have another banjo bolt from this caliper. So we will have stuff left over, but mind you, just keep an eye out for what you do have left over. That's all you should have left over. Other than that, guys, bike looks good, ready for riding season. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed it. Hit that like button if you enjoyed this video. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell for future videos with the R6.